Okay. Peace, family. It is Dawn with Dwelling in My Soft Era. I hope all of you all are doing so well today. I am so excited to announce our new guest. This is Sherri, the owner of Litehouse Wellness. She is also the owner of the Sacred Doula Collective, co owner of the Sacred Doula Collective. She is a phenomenal yoga practitioner, one of the best, if not the best, that I've had the pleasure and the honor of working with. And I just feel so elated and so blessed that she is here. She specializes in facilitating spaces for Black men to find their safety in yoga and in wellness. And so, thank you so much, Sherri, for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Dawn.
Of course, of course. So, this series is about, it's been this beautiful trend, I will say. Some trends are really amazing. It's been this trend of people kind of discussing their soft era and
Mm.
what that looks like for them. But what this podcast is about really is kind of debunking the surface level aspects of a soft life, where it's not just the aesthetic, but truly the work that comes with that. And one of the things that I truly admire about your work is the way that you pour into our community, period, but the spaces that you facilitate for Black men. So, can you tell us how you were able to kind of tap into
Oh my goodness, do we have enough time?
that?
Um, and so I'll just be really honest. I was resistant initially
Hmm.
when that seed began to germinate. I was like,
Hmm.
men, but I'm not a man, right? And what came to me was that the healing of our men
Hmm.
would need to be co-facilitated by the divine feminine, right?
Yeah.
With the emphasis on the co, right?
Hmm.
It's the
Hmm.
divine masculine combined with the divine feminine to create the whole. And I believe that's what was lacking. And
Hmm.
so I I understood at a very deep, fundamental level that those things that aided my healing, facilitated my healing and the healing of my sisters could be of great benefit to men as well. And so I began to do research just to see what resources were available within the community, particularly my community. And I didn't see many that were targeting Black men specifically,
Hmm.
right? For instance, safer, courageous spaces for Black men to
Hmm.
come and just be amongst themselves, right? And so
Yeah.
that's when we began to roll out our higher ground retreat offering at Black Land Ranch, which is just in about an hour outside of Dallas. And it's just a beautiful, sacred space. And the men come for a weekend and the meals are prepared and they are just held so wonderfully, right? And they're able to return home into their communities to do the work.
Hmm.
As it relates to the wellness space, I came to realize that the needs of Black men were pretty much excluded from those
Hmm.
conversations and from those rooms, and that the typical yoga studio
Yeah.
was the antithesis of safety for Black men,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? All those white women in Lululemon pants. I mean, they're like,
Yeah.
it wasn't stated explicitly, but the message
Yeah.
was loud and clear, right?
Right. Right. Right.
This
Hmm.
is not a space for us. And so I decided that it would be worthwhile to actually bring the yoga to the community and to the spaces where we are, right?
Yeah.
Bookstores, right? The
Hmm.
gathering places, the barbershops. Yeah.
I love that. So whenever you say that at some point, whenever you were really at the root of it or at the seedling of it, right, you were resistant.
Yeah.
What, like, how did that, I guess, show up in your body, in your space, your creativity? Like, what did that look like? And do you know why you were resistant?
That's a really good question, Don. Hmm. What did it feel like? it felt like grief.
Mm. Wow.
Um, it felt like sadness, deep sadness, um,
Mm.
sadness with my immediate existence, because I knew at a cellular level that I was not fulfilling my purpose,
Wow.
right? And so
Mm.
I feel like God disrupted everything that
Yeah.
I knew to be true, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the job that I came to depend on was no
Mhm.
longer
Mhm.
acceptable, right?
Yeah.
And we've worked jobs that, been in careers that are acceptable, right? It
Right.
checks all the boxes, but like I could feel it in my body. I could no longer continue on this path.
Yeah.
The resistance was based in fear,
Mm.
right? Like, wow, this is such a huge ask, universe.
Yeah.
This is a huge ask. I don't know if I'm prepared for this. I don't know if
Right.
I've chosen the right one, right?
Mm. Mm.
So kind of
Wow.
allowing patriarchy to get in my head,
Mm.
and reinforcing the messaging that I'm not enough. I'm not the one. I'm
Mm.
I don't have enough letters behind my name, and on and on
Wow.
and on, right? And
Mhm.
then it just wore me down to the point of exhaustion, and I was like, I relent. What do you want
Mhm.
me to do?
Yeah.
And once I allowed spirit to move through me,
Yeah.
once I permitted myself to be used in such a way, there was
Mhm.
just no turning back, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even 3 months out, I was like, oh, okay, this is
Right.
what I need to be doing. For
Right.
instance, I remember the messaging was very clear initially.
Mhm.
You are to go out and to share healing, not heal, but to share healing
No.
modalities with
Mhm.
Black men, specifically, ma'am.
Mhm.
And, I'm coming out of the corporate space. At the time, I was still in the corporate space, and I have
Mm.
been for decades, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm thinking, okay, all black, just Black men, that's not inclusive, right?
Right.
And so I'm going to use language that's softer. I'm going
Mhm.
to say things like BIPOC and Black
Right.
and brown. And let
Mhm.
me tell you, when I rolled that out, 3 people showed up to my class. And I was like,
Mm.
oh my goodness, 3 people, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I did that for 2 weeks. And then Spirit said, I told you.
Told you.
And I went in and I adjusted the language on the flyer, and it said
Mhm.
for Black men, for the Black community.
Mhm.
I remember I rolled up to where I was teaching, shout out to Pan African Connection,
Mm.
and the parking lot was packed out. And I was like, something must be going on in the area, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I walked in, I was greeted by a packed out room.
Mhm.
Like, you have to be specific.
Mm. Wow.
There is power in calling a thing,
Wow.
because
Wow.
everyone else does.
Yeah.
Everyone else
They
does.
do.
And so this is for us. This is because we need it the most. No one is coming to rescue us, right?
Right.
And we're not begging folks for what we need, because we
Yeah.
have what we need.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
that's what that looked like.
Absolutely. I love that. I love when you mention, you relented. It's like the great surrender. And
Yeah.
I think whenever, when you really just accept, where you're being called to go and you say, all right, you ain't got to beat me down no more. You
Yeah.
know, let me go ahead and, adjust my posture and get in alignment with. And then even after that, it's like, well, maybe I'll word it like this.
Yeah.
Maybe. And then just the evidence that came after of whenever you were in alignment, look at what happened.
Yeah.
And so I think that's so powerful. I think it's so powerful. Something else I loved is that you were specific, asking for that thing, calling it a thing. And I think that the reason that I have created this series is for, Black folks to be able to say, like, wow, that there is a space for me to be soft, for me to preserve my softness, for me to cultivate that in these different ways. Um, because we don't see it often, or we see it very, very superficially, and then we are constantly being told that, hey, well, the inclusivity, and like you say, everybody else is, they have their own, and it's okay for us to have that. It's okay.
Yes. Um, it's when the seed was planted, Dawn,
Hmm.
like decades ago.
Wow.
And and I remember my sister and I, we had coffee at a coffee shop, this new little coffee shop called White Rhino in Cedar Hill,
Hmm.
Texas. And I scrawled it out on a napkin. I still have that
Wow.
napkin.
Wow.
And it was going to have another name. And the name, it was an acronym, but I just couldn't figure it out. And I just got
Hmm.
caught up in the minutia.
Yeah.
Fast forward like 2 decades later, right?
Mm.
And it was like God said, I've been patient with you. I've been super patient with
Yeah.
you.
Right.
I'm about to shake up your world, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
disrupt your sleep.
Hmm.
I'm going to take off the rose-colored lenses that you have
Yeah.
on that's held you in a place of complacency,
Come on.
and I'm going to allow you to see it for what it really is, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, all right, I'm doing it. Um, and 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 then when God decided to shake it up, our community was really in a place, particularly our black
Yeah.
men. We speak specifically to our black men. They're in a place of crisis
Mm.
in terms of mental health and
Yeah.
their mortality, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, the media, like we know, like gun violence and things like that, right? But
Hmm.
the way that they're living, right, and
Hmm.
how they were choosing to nourish themselves in a way
Yeah.
that would numb the pain,
Hmm.
but would just have catastrophic effects on themselves and their families and our community as a whole, right?
Hmm.
And I'm going to all of these healing places, and I'm just seeing an abundance of women.
Yeah.
It's like, but where are our male counterparts? What are they doing?
Hmm.
For the
Hmm.
most part, they weren't engaging in healing modalities to the degree that we were. And not because
Right.
they didn't want to, but because they didn't even know that some of this stuff was available to them
Hmm.
and how to approach it. And that certain healing modalities were kind of tabbed as, what women do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of the work began with like breaking down the myths around
Hmm.
what healing and wholeness look like, and that it's not a woman's thing,
Hmm.
right? Or an activity that only women engaged in. For instance,
Right.
I began giving away um, King Spa certificates to Black men as gifts,
Hmm.
right? And they were like, a spa day for me? And I would have to like offer this caveat: please do not regift it to a woman,
Right.
right? It is for you. And if you just trust me and go, you'll thank me later. Invariably, they'll call me back. That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was incredibly amazing. I had no idea that this even existed and that I was allowed to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So seeing themselves in those spaces,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
the
Again,
invitation matters.
and speaking to that softness, right? Because
Hmm.
those are places where you can go, right? And
Yeah.
exhale.
Yeah.
You don't have to look over your shoulder. You can just
Hmm.
be. You're not forced to make conversation and to be
Right.
perceived as witty and what is that word that folks like to use when they describe us when we know how to conjugate our verbs,
Articulate.
articulate, right? We don't have to articulate, right? We
Yeah.
can just
Yeah.
be. Hmm.
Yeah. I love in the beginning whenever you said what was missing, I guess, in the space is the divine feminine,
Hmm.
and you showing up in that way. And it just kind of put me in the mind of whenever I was doing some yoga and self-care workshops for women, and it was like 2019 and some in 2020. And I remember I was talking to a lady. We were at a restaurant, and she had just started talking to me. She was there with her male coworker, and he was like, "Well, what about us?" And I was like, "Sir, I get to y'all when I get to y'all," And of course, we were all just being silly and joking. But that was something kind of like a reoccurring theme that I would hear, and even my beloved fiance has made mention of things like that. And so my thought then was that, well, that's not really. I think that's more for a man to facilitate. And that was just my first initial thought and reaction. Not that I ever felt that there was anything wrong with women doing it, but
Yes.
just my initial. So whenever you speak of that resistance almost, whenever the seed was planted and just these different things of, well, am I qualified? Are you sure it's me? What about this and what about that? And so it just really kind of brought me back to that. And I just was kind of laughing at myself, like, wow, there are these spaces that are necessary, especially as people that do have knowledge of various healing modalities, to say, hey, well, here's an offering. So I think that that's so powerful that you have leaned into that. Um, and I think what, because I met you at one of your events for or yoga classes for Black men. I was
Okay.
pregnant with Saint. I don't know if you remember.
Oh my, oh my goodness. Wow.
So I was pregnant with Saint, and I just remember I was like, okay, I think in the flyer it said it was specifically for Black men, but you had said it was open to the community, but we're going to keep them in mind.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, so whenever I get there, because I was about to go to my yoga training, I said, I'll sit in the back to make sure that, because I just didn't know what to expect.
Right.
And so I remember that we did our sequence and everything, and I just thought, like, wow, she has such a beautiful spirit. It
Mm.
just felt like just warmth and safety. And so I was like, wow, this is definitely necessary. And so we had talked afterwards, and I just kind of told you about myself and everything, and you had shared with me that you were a doula, and I was just like, this I don't know. I think sometimes, like, for Black women in our community, especially whenever they're these amazing pillars, we a lot of times like tier them as mothers or motherly, or you have a presence of almost like sainthood, if
Oh,
that makes sense. Like, and that's just whenever I met you, I was like, safety. Whenever I see you, I feel safety. And I don't know. That was just on my heart to say. But I'm just thankful for these spaces, because I was able to observe you in this space and observe the safety, to feel it, to see these Black men that would have likely otherwise not been introduced to the practice of yoga, doing yoga, participating. It was no shame, it was no reservation. And I think with a lot of things that I've just based off of things that I've observed and even engaged with some of my brothers on, it's like almost this shame of softness, or the shame of healing, or like you say, well, that's something women do. It's like, no, you need to be doing it too. You know?
for sure. For sure. Wow, that just warms my heart that
Mhm,
you sharing that observation, right?
mhm.
You know, the yoga mat should be a safer space, right? And
Yeah.
I add the ER because I cannot guarantee that you will not be wounded or
Mm,
or triggered in some way by
right.
something that is evoked in your practice,
Mhm,
right? Through the stillness, right? Because
mhm,
that's how we've been conditioned to move,
mhm.
to numb, move to avoid, right?
Right. Right.
All of the things are trying to catch up with us, and we're like, if I keep it moving,
Yeah.
which is like hashtag keep it moving,
Right.
I can outrun my pain. I can
Mm.
outrun my trauma, right?
Mm.
And when we're out in the world and when we're out in corporate spaces, we're not invited to show up in the fullness of who we are.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah.
asked to compartmentalize ourselves, right? And folks want to pick and choose. Society will pick and choose what is acceptable.
Right. Right.
And therefore, we've been inculcated that there are pieces of ourselves that are not acceptable for the public
Come on.
eye. But when I teach yoga, I invite through the lineage of teachers that flow through me, through the power of God, to come as you are,
Yeah.
right? That we can this container that the community puts together by showing up, it has enough integrity to hold whatever you have.
Mhm.
And I,
Right.
and I and I think that in itself, just stepping onto the mat, that there's a softness that comes over you when
Yeah.
you realize, oh, so that's what this is.
Right.
I can show up sad, mad. No one's going to
Mhm.
question me. No one's going to ask me why I'm not smiling. No one's
Mhm.
going to try to hug me. No one's going to try to hug me and wipe away my tears to stop my tears from flowing.
Right.
That they can hold all the pieces of me. I need more of that in my life.
Mm.
And I know that I received that, and it was such a beautiful gift the first time I experienced that. I want our entire community to experience that, and
Mm.
particularly our men, because when our men are healed, when our men are operating from a place of wholeness, we
Mm.
all benefit.
Yeah.
We all benefit. And you talk about the softness. I can soften, right? The
Mhm.
the breadth of my shoulders and the strength of my biceps is not because I choose, right? It's because I don't
Mhm.
have a choice. And it's because I've been
Right.
asked to kind of step in and fill the gaps where these
Mm.
gaps exist. I would love to fall back
Yeah.
and be softer than strong more
Mhm.
often than not. Yeah?
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. Oh, that was. I want to take a deep breath after that.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's breathe.
Okay. You know, when I found out that I was pregnant with twins,
Oh my goodness.
um, I was so taken aback. And then I always, I guess, imagine myself as a girl mom. Because, I have Saint, I have my sister, and of course, I'm close to both my parents. But it was just, I'm just the girl's girl, right? And
Right.
so my fiance has two boys himself, and then now we have our twin boys together.
Okay.
And I remember I grieved um, in a way that I don't think a lot of people understood initially, or the people that know me intimately, because I was like, well, how I know how to help a black woman navigate certain spaces, right, in the world. I know because I've been able to do that. I come from women that have done it, and and I'm surrounded by women that do it. That are exploring their creativity, that are healing, that are healing themselves and their families and all of that. But I was like, how will I do that with boys? That come from me. And I remember I really wept because I was like, okay, we're in this, we're here, right? And this is the truth about the world that we live in. But I'm like, how can I remedy that? And I think once I realized that it's not for me to remedy that thing, it's for me to offer supportive care and guidance
Mhm.
to my children, period. And because even with Saint, as she becomes older, God willing, she's still going to have to navigate as a Black woman in her own, in her own period. And so I just remember I was like, I said to myself that once things level out, I want to do more volunteering where I am in the presence of people serving Black men in this capacity. So, just being able to even observe you whenever I have the opportunity, because you know these kids keep me busy, girl. I can't get out like I used to. But just being able to observe you has healed so much of of my own just uncertainty and questions about and even some of the hurt. And it's like, okay, like you say, whenever we're both operating like we should, there's nothing that can infiltrate what we have. There's nothing that can break that foundation. And so I love that you know that you've stepped into that. What are some things that, as you're navigating these spaces and you're holding, you know, everybody's pieces and you're pouring, um, what are ways that you continue to keep your cup filled?
Mm, yeah. So important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I am a Rumi fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love Rumi. I remember when um, Beyonce and Jay Z named their child Rumi, and they were like, "That's such a strange name." I'm like, "Oh, y'all don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 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 no, no.
Y'all don't get it." Um, so Rumi said, "This is my favorite quote." Rumi
Mm-hmm.
quote: "Give not from the depths of your well, but from your overflow."
Mm-hmm.
That is what I live by. I remember I was at Kripalu, um, um, an ashram in the Berkshire Mountains in Massachusetts many years ago, and it was on a wall, on a
Mm-hmm.
poster, and I never had to write it down. It was just from that moment indelibly etched into my subconscious, a download for sure.
Yeah,
This is how you will move to do this work, to take up this baton. You will have to give from your overflow because
yeah,
otherwise it won't be sustainable.
right. Come on.
When you give from the depths of your well, um, you are perpetually thirsty, you are perpetually hungry,
Yeah,
and resentment begins to seep in
yeah,
into work because you're always wondering, it's always in the back of your mind, will there be
mm-hmm.
enough left for me
Mm-hmm.
once the day is done?
Yeah,
Once I come to the end of this moment. But when you give from your overflow, your needs are met.
mm-hmm.
Your needs are met. And so for me, what that looks like is when I feel myself approaching um, exhaust, right? When I feel myself um, in a space of low energy, I have to step back and say, okay, how have we been nurturing ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Physically, emotionally, spiritually, and so on. What does that look like? Do we need to pivot?
yeah.
What adjustments do we need to make? And let me tell you, Don, it is a conversation like I'm having with you. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
girl, like that.
Yeah,
Girl,
yeah.
what have we been doing? Have we had sunlight today? We've been sitting
Right.
at this computer. We're going for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Looking at your schedule and maybe having to send some emails and reschedule some things and
Yeah.
say, you know what, I have to prioritize my wellness today,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that I can continue on this trajectory, right?
Right.
Because when I received the download, there wasn't an end date on that
Mhm.
download.
Come
It was,
on.
this is your work. This is what
Yeah,
I need you to do. And in order
yeah.
for me to do this work, I need to make sure that I am always in alignment with source. So for me,
Mhm,
that looks like connecting and maintaining relationships with
mhm,
folks who have already walked this path, right? And
mhm,
they are my elders. And
yeah,
so I have a mentor who lives in the DMV area. And periodically, I will send her a text and say, can I buy you a virtual coffee?
mhm,
right? And I don't have to. She doesn't expect me to do this, but I think it's just a way for me to acknowledge that I value her time.
Mhm.
And so I will cash app her $8, right? So she can go get her
Yeah.
coffee whenever she wants to. But it's like, I'm serious. Like on this day,
Yeah.
I will be calling you and I
Right.
expect you to pick up because
Yeah.
I need what you have. Just how people show
Right.
up to me in community,
Mhm.
like I need what you have. There are folks who have positioned themselves
Yeah.
where I can go and get what I need from them as well.
Yeah.
Um, Nurturing my relationships with my sister circles, right?
Mhm.
The relationship that I have with my daughter and my
Mhm.
granddaughter, making sure that I'm pouring wisdom into them as well. And so one day when I reach the end of this work, they won't have to, excuse me, learn about me through other people's experiences.
Mhm.
That when people share and speak on, and when people call my name in reverence, I hope someday,
Yeah.
right, generations ahead of me, one day will call my name in reverence, that it will not be a surprise to my family. That they'll be
Yeah.
like, we know exactly what you're talking about it.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Before she attempted to pour out into the world, she
Mhm.
filled us up,
Yeah. Yeah. I
right?
love that.
Yeah. So that's how I keep my cup full.
Yeah.
Staying tapped in to my circle and also
Yeah.
stand in alignment
In alignment.
with the creator.
Yeah. I think that those are two of the everybody wants to know the secret of, of everything. And um community for me has always been number one. And then alignment is what I have really truly been submitting myself to here lately. um, and so I love that you mentioned your mentor, your daughter, your granddaughter, your family, your elders, because I think that in general, especially something that I see often right now, is a lot of people don't really understand the value of community and being poured into and then pouring into other people and the mastering the gift of reciprocity. You
Hmm.
know, I'm gonna love on you, you gonna love on me, and where I may lag, you pick up. It's just we are communal beings. We just are. And I believe I always tell people before our history was interrupted in the way that it was, you know, um, we knew these things. And even after we understood it. But there was so much disruption through various periods of time here that I think a lot of what we think of community is often very jaded. We have a lot of mistrust for one another. And it just is very, very disheartening. I'm very big on sisterhood. That's one thing that I'm always talking about. I'm obsessed with my kids. They're obsessed with me. know? And even with my mentors, the same thing. I'll send them some eyeballs and say, hey, what you doing? Yeah. And even with, I'm like, I even want to get with you some days, like whenever you have time to just sit at your feet and listen, you know. And I think sometimes people don't realize the power in just listening, just sitting and observing and allowing your elders and the people that have been there and done that and know more than you to just giving them room to speak.
Giving them room to speak and also saying, hey, I need something, right?
Hmm.
And as light makers,
Yeah.
that's what we are. It can be lonely, right?
Yeah.
And that when I was speaking about grief, right? When the
Hmm.
resistance in my body, I when I realized that I had to acquiesce the call, the grief was about letting go of what I knew,
Hmm.
letting go of what I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm stepping into a space that I'm not familiar with at all. I'm going blindly and I'm trusting, right? I'm
Yeah.
being led to go into the space, but also
Right.
knowing that it's a lonely space,
Yeah.
right? There are not many women doing the work that I do, right?
Right.
And the light makers, there are not enough of us. And
Yeah.
we want to support each other, right? But we're
Mhm.
so busy doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when we're not working, hopefully we're resting, we're
Mhm.
restoring, right?
Mhm.
We're allowing ourselves to become comfortable in our beingness,
Yeah.
which is something that I teach all the time, right? The quality of our beingness informs the quality of our doing,
Mhm.
right? Which means that when we come to a place of stillness, we're not questioning, oh, well, am I not being social? Shouldn't I be doing something?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Shoulding ourselves. Don't should yourself,
Come
right?
on.
Just allow yourself to be, right?
Yeah.
This is where the regeneration, this is where the restoring happens. And
Mhm.
not for the sake of doing more,
Come on.
not for the sake
Yeah.
of doing more, that our beingness is a gift. Our worthiness is in our being, not in
Mhm.
our doing, right? Not how
Mhm.
many classes we teach, not how many likes and followers we have, not how, of people tooting our horn. That has nothing to do with it.
Right.
It is the quality of our being.
Right.
Who are we in our being?
Right.
What do we bring in our beingness? That's
Mhm.
the key.
Mhm.
And that place in the beginning, it can feel isolating,
Yeah.
right? The places, the things and the places and all the stuff that
Yeah.
was considered your norm, it no longer feels comfortable. It no longer feels
Oh.
welcoming,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And you begin to question the call. Is this what I'm supposed to be
It's
doing?
like, are you sure?
Are you sure? Because I used to have fun over there.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's what's so powerful about the spaces that you create is because you create spaces for community.
Mhm.
And something that I tell people is that if I'm bringing in people from, these that are coming from these very difficult backgrounds, right? Or even that are in tumultuous situations right now, and they're coming in for a class or a workshop or a retreat. The goal is not just to give them a good word and a good stretch, but to have them meet people that they can link arms with in this commitment to reaching greater self. And so that's what I think is so beautiful about what you said, mentioning, how your community pours into you and how you're able to pull from your community as you pour into your community. And that helps you further to stay in alignment. And it's so much of what, our brothers need.
Yes. Yes. Our brothers and our
Hmm.
babies,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So when I initially founded Lighthouse Wellness, the
Hmm.
mission was specifically for Black men. We were centering the wellness of Black men. It has since expanded
Hmm.
beyond Black men, right,
Yeah,
to the entire community. And
yeah,
so, there's an arm of Lighthouse Wellness that takes SCL to the schools in the form of mindfulness and yoga. And I remember there was resistance there, right? At every
hmm,
level of growth and
yeah.
expansion. It's like, but wait a minute, this is comfortable. I like this now, you know?
Right.
It's like, yeah, but I need you to take this and share it with our children, with our youth, with
Hmm.
our young scholars, because there's um, preventative work that we can
Come
do
on.
if we share this work with them now,
Yeah.
right? And so here you are trying to undo some things, helping brothers to undo some things, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
there's a lot of trauma and discourse in their wake. Let's
Hmm.
prevent some of this by working
Hmm.
with our youth. And so
Hmm.
that has really been an eye-opening experience and
Yeah.
really just fills my heart in a way that I could not have ever expected. I mean, to introduce yoga to a class to a room of seventh and eighth grade boys, and to leave that space and to have them meet you at the door and ask, are you coming back next week?
Yeah.
I really like this. I really like how it
Mhm.
makes me feel like I could do this work for free, you know?
Yeah.
And that's it, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know that you've hit the sweet spot where you're like, I could do
Yeah.
this for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, this is it.
Ah, there you go.
Hmm.
Right. So with the kids, I love how you said, because, there's a quote, it's better to build up strong children than to, repair broken
Broken
men.
men and women.
Yeah. And, working with you on the SEL program, I was very thankful when you brought me on board as one of the practitioners. And I remember whenever you had initially made the post, I was like, should I reach out? Should I, it's just that, everything that you're talking about, kind of the resistance or the fear or the
Mhm.
doubt, it's so relatable. And I reached for you and you reached back. And I remember I was like, kids, though, kids, Gabrielle, like, and I was just like, this is what you're feeling, this calling to do to this capacity. And so I said, okay. And, I would call you after. Sometime I'd be like, I don't know if I'm bothering Sherri, but I'm still going to call her and see,
Yeah.
just touching bases and, and making sure that I'm on track because it's something that is so needed.
Yeah.
It is so, so, so needed. And I remember the first day that I went in to one of the schools, she was one of the administrators and she was just having a very difficult time. And so she came up with me and we did a little yoga, some meditation before everybody came in. And I was like, okay, like, all right, like, okay, I'm seeing why I'm here. I'm seeing, what's going on because I was like, well, are kids going to, are they going to enjoy it? Or is it going to be this or that? And so to see the administrators, the teachers, the children all be able to take in what we are bringing, it's just been revealing to me that it's so necessary. And even in our homeschool group, I facilitate yoga for the kids, and I'm like, it's so 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 necessary for these children to learn these skills early, and for them to I guess become normalized in a sense to where it's like I remember one of the young men, he was in the fourth grade. He was like, I've been doing yoga with my dad. And I said, I know that's right, you
Yeah.
know. And one of the things I was having them do after we would go through our sequences, I would group them and have them come up with their own. So he was taking his sequence home to his father.
I love.
And it's things like that where it's like, wow. And I say it all the time, like so much of your growth when you're a parent, so much growth comes from just observing your children. And so I thought it was so beautiful that this young man was able to go home and take that to his father. And I was like, wow, wow, because again, it's not something that's generally popularized. And thankfully, there's more information coming out about it. There's more accessibility. There's just more of everything right now, which is great. And so um, I'm thankful that you were obedient in that space, and didn't let the fear or of the potential disruption, you know, take you away from it.
I am too. I really am too. And it's been healing, right?
Hmm.
Um, they say that absence of play is depression,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And as a yoga teacher, it invites me to play, right?
Yeah.
To think outside of the box, right?
Yeah.
I'm not teaching children or youth a 60-minute sequence, right?
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
sequence that I am teaching, I'm having to share it in a way that's playful and
Hmm.
uplifting, right? And we do
Hmm.
a lot of smiling and it's noisy. And
Yeah.
it really tickles me that when we get noisy, the teachers are like, hey, 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 hey.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
It's like I got it, right?
Yeah.
It's you should hear giggling and
Hmm.
laughter and it should be silly. right?
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't take ourselves that seriously. And
Yeah.
our youth, they need time to play. Adults need
Mhm.
time to play.
Mhm.
So when I'm in the schools, that's some of my playtime. And it has had a remarkable positive impact on my mental health,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like I have a student that'll show up and in a bad mood and doesn't really want to
Mhm.
participate. And I'm like, you know what? You can go into alligator pose. You can go into child's pose. I'm not going to tell you that how you're feeling is wrong and that
Right.
you know how you're presenting is unacceptable. It is what it is.
Mhm.
But let me give you
Right.
some options to work with. And then if you
Mhm.
ever want to join the group, you're always welcome. The teacher is like, hey, 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 hey.
Right. Right.
I'm like, it's okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. If the student wanted to just recline on their mat, that is yoga.
Mhm. Yeah.
Student wants to just sit in easy pose for the duration of the practice. That too
Yeah.
is yoga,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Let's accept that. Let's accept
Mhm.
how our babies show up and that they
Mhm.
are, sentient beings and they have bad days occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about yoga, and meet you where you're at. So, like you said, that's yoga. You laying down, you taking a nap if you need to, you sitting in chat. That's yoga, and yoga is always going to meet you right where you're at if
Yes.
you allow it.
Hmm.
And so, I think one of the things that I've just observed, with that being said, children are going to tell you what they need, one way or another. They may not, we always say, like, use your words, but what are their actions telling you?
Yes.
And if we allow ourselves to be tuned in to our inner child, we see they had it right. It's
Yeah.
whenever, all this, hey, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that, then they become these adults that don't know how to be expressive, that don't know how to honor their boundaries in their space. And so that's been one of the most powerful things for me with working with the kids is to say, okay, when we pay attention, and even observing my own children, when we pay attention, if you are tired, you need to take a nap. You just go lay down.
Yeah.
Maybe you do just need to sit down because everybody else right now is in a space where they can go into mountain and then do a downward dog and then come back up, but you may not be in that space for whatever reason, and that's okay. You have to honor that.
Right.
And you just have to find yourselves in safe spaces where those around you will honor it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You know, um, I had a teacher come up to me recently and she was like, your your level of patience is unmatched. It's like,
hmm
what I don't think is my patience, it's my expectation, right?
yeah, come on.
Is that I have very realistic expectation. I'm working
Yeah.
with children and children will behave as children behave,
hmm
right?
hmm
And it is incumbent upon me to meet them, to your point, where they're
hmm
at, right? To get down on their level, to get onto the floor, right? To
yeah.
not talk down at them,
hmm
to talk with them,
right,
right?
right.
And so it's like that's what you're seeing is that I'm relating to them.
hmm
I'm not just giving them information and expecting them
right.
to behave or to regurgitate it back in a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to that allowing and acceptance, right? Those A
hmm
words.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that, observing you in your practice, in both practices with the children and then bringing it back to the Black man, it's the same thing applied.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we overcomplicate so much,
Yes.
you know, when it's just about um, safety, allowance, and acknowledging. Okay, like I'm working with a population of men that um, have been oppressed significantly. I'm working with a population of men where certain resources are not, made available, not easily. I'm working with, so how can I show up and what can I do
Mm.
in order to hold the appropriate space? And I think that that is so powerful because there's been this ongoing theme of like
Yeah.
these gender wars, especially in podcast spaces, where it's men versus women and everybody is just, and I'm like, I think if we actually sat down and listened to one ourselves
Yeah.
and kind of began to explore why we have certain thoughts and feelings, and then created spaces where we could maybe discuss, like you say, not talking at you, talking with you, being on your level, understanding, then that exchange I think will be so beautiful. But it's not until we are able to listen to ourselves. And in the space that I think you're facilitating, it's helping Black men to be okay with listening to themselves, with hearing themselves. So I don't know if I cracked the code, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Because you said, that curiosity, right?
Hmm.
Entering into spaces, entering into engagements with curiosity, right?
Hmm.
Not approaching it or walking in as though you hold the key or the answer, right?
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like I possess these tools.
Yeah.
How would these tools best serve you? Right?
Yeah.
I'm curious, right? It's like entering into a yoga class, teaching adults. You've created a sequence. You have a vision of how this class will flow. And then you read the room and it's like, that's not going to work today,
Come on. Yeah.
right? Because it's not about me. This isn't my practice,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so I really, like it, this work has really reshaped my entire life, my approach to
Hmm.
teaching all things, including yoga, right?
Hmm.
That I will not teach a class without asking, what is it that you need today?
Yeah. Yep.
What do you need? And I'm going to ask everyone, what do you need today?
Hmm.
And then
Yep.
if I don't ask, I'm reading the energy. I'm allowing it to speak
Hmm.
to me, right?
Yep.
And it's like, I have no idea what I just taught, but everyone in here is like a wet noodle. So
Right. Right. I guess we did it. Right.
apparently they got what they needed today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Being flexible. I always say, it's so, pun intended. But as a yoga practitioner, I always say like the best teachers, the best instructors, are going to assess what you need and going to ask. Like it's so much deeper than just what it is physically. And so anytime I walked into a class and y'all just gonna jump into the flow, I'm gonna ask somebody how they doing. I get a little nervous. I said, okay, all right, it's a little different, but let me go ahead and I ebb and flow through. But I think that even in my own practice, I don't think I tell you, because anytime you attempt to choreograph a sequence, when you go in and you check in with whoever shows up, you say, well, man, I got to throw that out
Hmm.
because this person here is having some issues with resistance,
Right.
or so maybe we need to do some openers,
Right.
right? They are they've come over and their posture is hunched over, so we need them to be releasing. We need to do some twists. We need to do, and so just allowing yourself, even as the facilitator, to be flexible,
Hmm.
because a lot of times we ask that of those that we are standing in the front of, but you can't ask that of people if you're not willing to be that and to be of service in that way. So I love that you said that. And it's something that I can attest that you do.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I just believe that, you know, the yoga training, the way that it is offered in the West, is
Mhm.
it's what is the word that I'm looking for? It is transactional, right?
Yeah.
And it's not presented as, are you sure? Are you sure you want to take on this mantle, right? Because you are stepping into this healing space as
Yeah.
as a healing arts practitioner, and this is medicine that you're doling
Mhm.
out, right? And it's not so much about classes, right, and
Mhm.
sequences.
Mhm.
It's about addressing the needs of the people that come to you for this
Right.
healing practice. And it
Right.
needs to be accessible,
Mhm.
geographically accessible, right?
Yeah.
You take the medicine to the
Mhm.
community that needs it. You take it to the community, but also how are you serving the community? Everybody can't take the medicine from a spoon,
Yeah. Come on.
right?
Come on.
Sometimes you got to mix it with a little sugar, right?
Yeah.
Because it's too bitter. Like you really have to consider the audience of people, and the audience changes from session to session,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's just not acceptable for someone to
Mhm.
come into your class and you're like, oh, this is the only way I know how to serve up the medicine. So,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I don't know what to tell you. Like you have to figure it out. And
Yeah.
and I think it starts with humility with yourself, right? I don't have all the answers. This is
Mhm.
not my medicine. I've
Mhm.
simply allowed my body to be used as a vessel for that medicine to flow through,
Mhm.
right? And really,
Mhm.
in grounding yourself before a class, before a session, before a meditation, and saying, use me.
Right.
Use me. I am availing myself. I am allowing
Mhm.
myself to be used. And I welcome the flow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a word in and of itself. That was medicine. That was medicine.
You have poured into my cup today, dear sister.
Oh, I love to hear it. I'm so happy to hear it.
Yeah.
So, are there any things that are coming up for you? Right now we're shooting this in February. It'll be posted in March, but are there any things coming up that, you could share the good folks watching?
Huh. Coming up, well, we're perpetually in the schools, right? In the school districts here in North Texas. And we're working on two retreats, international retreats for fall and early winter of 2024, one for women and one for men. So stay tuned. We'll be posting to the website and to the Instagram within the next 6 weeks. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So we're excited about that.
I'm so excited. I'm excited to continue, just observing you, supporting you in whatever way that I can. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I just know this is going to really fill somebody's bowl up when it's posted.
Mm.
And, y'all make sure you share this with somebody, fill somebody up, fill yourself up. Like, share, and subscribe, baby. Be well.